We all know the ways in which Tarkov uses visual effects and strong audio mixing to give the weapons a real, believable punch. The lighting and environments go further to push the idea of an immersive world. But what about the less obvious mechanics? Are they not just as key to the full experience as the flashing lights and the brilliant noises? Today, I want to break down some of the mechanics you may not think about and how they affect the way you play the game. There is something to be said about the contrast of being safe and secure in the menu, with your hideout and inventory locked away from the world outside. Regardless of what you lose in raid, you will always have your hideout and whatever you possess in your inventory. This sense of security makes the main menu feel almost like an untouchable base of sorts, which it is. Unlike in-game, the menu has music to separate itself completely from the actual gameplay. Combine this with the time and care it takes to put together a set of gear, especially when newer to the game, and this virtual workbench of sorts, tweaking and tuning each part of your in-game character leads to a more engaging game overall, before even a single move is made. You are investing yourself in this character by spending time with them, building them up, and, by extension, preparing yourself for the challenges ahead. So taking this feeling of safety into account, I have always had this idea that the load screen was a bit like taking a ride somewhere dangerous. A feeling of anticipation and anxiousness building, however subtle, is one that should not be ignored. As the music fades out and the ambience fades in, your mind is already starting to think about the world you are entering. As the final timer starts to count down to 0, it's like standing on the edge of a diving board. The screen fades from black and you are fully in the game. You are no longer safe, but exposed. So you are invested in this extension of yourself, and that's when the world surrounds you with details and sounds to help bring you to the forefront of the experience. While none of these underlying feelings are incredibly important on their own, they add to building a real and believable world, whether you are aware of the reasons or not. And let me tell you, in terms of things we may not put much stock in, the minimalist nature of the interact menu is key to ensuring that the player's attention is never truly drawn to it where it could detract from the world around them. The way it's framed as a player choice, rather than a forced interaction, is also incredibly smart and plays into the idea that your character is your avatar in this real world, able to make right or wrong choices. To elaborate what I mean, pick any door that doesn't really go anywhere or is locked. The game gives you a breach option, which will not work on every door you can use it on. Rather than forcing your hand, the game lets you make your own choices. And yes, this is a small detail, but these small choices add up. I think this feeling really starts to solidify the first time you find a door you can actually breach. All of a sudden, subconsciously, any door is possibly breachable. Now you may understand that to be false, but when it comes to immersion, I think the key components are in the things you don't directly think about. Things like great effects and sounds can make a game far more immersive than otherwise, but can be let down by a bad interface or an overbearing menu. I think Amazon's New World has an incredibly tangible world. Hell, I even made a video or two about it. But in my eyes, it will never be as immersive as it could be simply because of how the buttons for interacting with the world exist in the world. This much interface existing in the world makes sense, but detracts from the tangibility of the rest of the mechanics provide. As the type of game it wants to be, however, these are concessions that they had to make to ensure the overall experience. In a game like Tarkov, the entire gameplay loop, start to finish, can be tuned and changed to better fit this immersive survival shooter playstyle. Another mechanic I don't see people talking about as much as they should is how every item you pick up has a physical model. Whether you drop them or mess with them in your inventory, you should never underestimate what your brain does with this sort of information. Even if you aren't consciously thinking about it, this gives the items in your inventory a real sense of existence. The fact that so much loot is in the physical world is no happenstance, as it gives just a little bit more of physicality to the items you interact with so frequently. As much as I loathe the weight system in practice, it has done nothing but add tangibility to these items. And while inventory Tetris isn't immersive, it really does feel like trying to fit a bunch of items in a backpack in practice. I don't think it's any mistake that searching a backpack or container has so many noises attached to it. Many games have pretty normalized audio, which is to say no sounds are inherently too much louder or quieter than any other. Tarkov takes this and throws it right out the window, with hugely varied sound levels of gunfire and explosions compared to the relatively quiet footsteps and other audio cues. With this sort of soundscape, ambience becomes a key component to immersion. Instead of simply listening for sound cues you need to hear, you are forced to listen into the ambience for the sounds you need to hear inside of the noises of your surroundings. I think it is important to note that this is how we naturally hear things in our surroundings and helps our brain to build a believable soundscape, which only further adds to the immersion of the world at large. And there are so many little details we could pin down that add to giving actions weight. Hearing shells hit the floor after firing, seeing the rain hit your weapons and gloves, lightning striking and hearing the thunder after. These are all minor details that I think are taken for granted in the grand scheme of things. Our brain has built-in expectations for how a world should be and act in the realm of realism, and by adding in these sorts of expected occurrences in the world, however small, causes our mind to start filling in the blanks. And this is what makes these details so powerful. They give your mind the information it needs to interact with the world as it would interact with a real one. I don't think enough credit is given to how many little unseen details go into the modern world of gaming and how many of the best games understand these tools to help us engage with the worlds they create. I've barely scratched the surface with the things I've talked about in this video, as I wanted to focus on some of the smaller details that influence the feeling of the world at large. Did you find any of this interesting? Did you think about any of these things? Let me know in the comments. I love discussing this sort of stuff with people. We often can overlook what is causing us to have the experiences we do, and while I don't speak for everyone, I hope by breaking these mechanics down, we can better understand what makes us love some of our favorite games. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time. Where did this fool go? Okay, I killed that guy. I think this was the guy that killed you.